and of course we talk with the world's first global Greens conference was held here in Canberra in 2001. Margaret Blakers was central to the planning of that, and the second one was held in Sao Paulo in 2007, and the next one's coming up in Senegal next year. Come if you can. If you can get to Senegal, you're in for the third Global Greens conference I think it's in April of next year. Elizabeth May, the first Green elected into the Canadian Parliament. I've known Elizabeth for quite a long while. She tried last time and just failed. But it's a first past the post system, very difficult, but she took on a minister this time in Vancouver and she got elected and on a first past the post system, and she's into the Canadian Parliament. There are now some 500 parliamentarians around the world. We've just got the first state, it's the third biggest state in Germany, has now got a Greens government, and the opinion polls point to the possibility of a Greens German Chancellor at the next election. May not happen then, but it's coming.
Sorry, I think she was next. But...
Hi Bob. A slightly different style of question. Being an environmental organiser myself and also communicating with different groups, and I read an article on GRIS the other day about the sort of depression and distress that can occur for environmental campaigners, and particularly how they take it out amongst themselves and can become quite aggressive amongst each other. My question to you is, how, after all this time and a lifetime of working as an environmental organiser and campaigner, have you managed to stay so positive in the face of environmental destruction?
Oh, thank you. I love that question because I spent 10 years depressed when I was younger. You know, you look at... I told somebody today in the media that I'd once thought about joining the Liberal Party, but I said since then I've become unconfused. But you have to look at what's going on in the world, and then just quite functionally, this is a practical, empirical decision. You've got to put all those problems on the shelf and be able to gauge things for yourself so that that burnout doesn't come. It looks like if we don't act urgently, it's all going to be too hard. It's all going to collapse. I got grabbed by the collar by David, the most decorated US Marine in the Vietnam War, David Hackworth, Colonel David Hackworth in Hobart once, and he said, Ronald Reagan's in, he's mad, he's going to blow the world up. You've heard what he said about Russia, 5 minutes and bang. And he's got all these nuclear weapons, and you've got to stop this forest nonsense and get on with this. And I suddenly said, David, if that's the case, I'm going home to read a book. You have to firstly consider that there is time and that we have time. Feeling that there isn't is a prescription for demoralisation. We don't know what the future's got in store for us. We do know this could all be a terrible fix for humanity, but we have to assume it's not. The people in business have no worry about this, so we've got to look after ourselves. And I choose optimism or pessimism. They both feed on each other. You've got a choice. And my experience is optimism is a preferable one. It works better. It just keeps the smile on the face. Be kind to other people who are distressed. Take them out for a cup of tea. If occasionally, I tell you, I was totally out of my mind. Totally, I didn't think I could stand it waiting for the High Court decision on the Franklin. And I went to Wollongong, to the university, to give the annual oration. I got there, my brain wasn't working. I thought this will be a small group of people, I'll just fudge it. And I walked into the biggest lecture theatre in Wollongong, packed to the rafters. I'd flown up to Sydney and got driven down. And I remember walking down the aisle, and this is this is a touchy moment for me, but the folk in Hobart had realised I was in a bit of a... And out of the audience came a sister of one of the women working in Hobart, and she said, pressed some flowers into my hand and just said, Bob, this is from all your workmates in Hobart. And you see, it's we have to be thinking of each other when things are going wrong. Take somebody away, have a cup of tea, get them a bunch of flowers. I always say to people, say, Christine Milne's doing a fantastic, Rachel Seward is such a great person. Send them a card and tell them that. Just send them a little card, handwritten, not an email, but a little card, and tell them how you feel. It means so much to people who are working hard, who are at the coalface. And finally, have a look in the mirror every now and then and say, you're okay. You're no better, no worse. You're doing the best you can. Talk to yourself as if you're talking to somebody over the back fence when it's going tough, and you're okay. And I have to say here, the other thing is, never spurn the potential for good companionship. Without Paul, I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing in the Senate. And I guess that leads me to Emma Goldman, the great social revolutionary of Chicago, fighting for women and for poverty-stricken people, for social revolution at the end of the 19th century. But she said to her fellow social revolutionaries, I don't want your revolution if I can't dance. And so have some fun. It's really important. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, but you're aware that a number of scientists have tried to tell the Australian people the truth about climate change for the last almost 20 years. Well, I'm one of them. I believe that you can get your 51% if people knew actually what is going on in the atmosphere of the oceans. But they cannot know if there is a media cover-up. And the media cover-up is 98%. Our voice is marginalized, and my experience and that of my colleagues is that our reports, first-class reports, based on the best science, as to the scale and the time frame and the intensity of developments in the atmosphere ocean system is being covered up.
It's harrowing. And you may have noticed that I've taken on the Murdoch media this year. I keep getting asked when I'm going to retire, and I say, well, Rupert's 80 and going well, and he hasn't retired. I'm 66, I'll be 80 in 2024. I'll see how he's gone and then take a cue from there. He's my role model. The venality of and the small-mindedness of some of the media, not all by any means, but the power of the coal industry and the big mining corporations. And Machiavelli said 600 years ago, if you want to change the world, get ready to be squashed by those who've got the power and the money. And we see that happening here. And this is a planetary emergency. It's a crisis. And we're just drifting into it with everything pulling back on us. And don't we know that? Because, because of the Greens are there, we're getting a debate on a carbon price. But as I said earlier, it's not going to be a green outcome. It is, and it's very tough because people feel if they do speak up more loudly, they'll lose their jobs. But, I keep thinking of the suffragettes and keep thinking of the people who entered slavery and so on. They got tarred and feathered. I'm sitting here at politics in the pub. So, we just have to accept these are harrowing times and hope that we can get common sense, intelligence, and the message out there for people to change the way we're working before pre-catastrophe rather than after it. But let me repeat this. I'm not easy on people about this. People who vote Liberal, people who vote Labor, people who vote National Party are voting against planetary survival. You cannot say, oh, I want to protect the forests of the southeast New South Wales and vote for those parties. You cannot say, I want appropriate action on climate change and vote for those parties. You cannot say, I really want to see a world in which militarism is ended or replaced by a large S and vote for those parties. It is there on all of us. A vote for the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the National Party, and some of the other little parties around the place is a vote for keeping the drift. And we all have to know that when we go to the ballot box.
G'day, Bob.
G'day.
My name's Harry. I've got a question on the price of carbon. In terms of popular and political discourse has tended to frame it as a tax.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering whether strategically you think that that is the wrong way to approach it, given that it's a tax on it's a tax on big business, and there should be more of an emphasis on placing an ethical obligation on their part to absorb costs or limit costs on the average individual.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Tony Abbott, learning from Barnaby Joyce, went out there, great big tax, stop the tax.
Yeah.
The Murdoch presses run it big. And it's no, you know, we've got a dual system here of having a price on carbon, which will put an impost through the required purchase of permits on 1,000 biggest polluters in the country, moving to a trading scheme. 12 million Australian taxpayers are never going to pay a tax on carbon. They will see some increase passed on from those big polluting corporations in prices, and that's going to be compensated. But the deliberation with which people who know better have obscured that and promoted at every time Tony Abbott gets on a horse or into a Mack truck, this caricature of what is reality is something it's very difficult to get around. But people are able to think for themselves. They're able to ask the questions, and so be it. As I said today, Tony Abbott's made a habit of saying no. It's where the Greens were said to have been 20 years ago. He's back there where we were then. The difference is, in his case, saying no has got the people saying yes. It's a Galbraith thing again. People want to vote for that. We can do the best we can. But it's up to people in this democracy. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, Bob. My name's Charles. I've got a question for you about world peace. I see as one of the main things in the world today is the occupation of Palestine by the Israelis is a major hindrance to world peace. I think you know, I recently spent some time in the West Bank. I experienced firsthand the daily humiliation and the misery in which Palestinians live under the occupation of the Israelis. Whilst I was there, I was part of a number of discussions, and I remember the discussion about the BDS, the boycott, divestment, sorry, I've gone blank on the S. Sanctions. Thank you.
Sanctions.
Sanctions, yeah. Sorry, I was there when the Gaza war, the most recent Gaza war started, and just seeing the utter frustration of even the Palestinian Authority not prepared to support the Palestinians in that situation. So the BDS was talked about and brought up again, and I was very disappointed when the National Greens weren't prepared to support New South Wales or Marrickville when they proposed that.
Good question. Well, let me put this in context. First of all, when Marrickville Council proposed that, the National Greens had already considered that idea and not adopted it. It didn't happen the other way around. The second thing is that we, the Greens nationally, after a long debate, have a very considered policy on Palestine and Israel, and no other party has. It's up there, and we've brought it into the Parliament. We've had it passed by our national Parliament. But the evolution of what happened in Marrickville, let me be blunt about this, is that the seat of Marrickville was lost over that issue. Now, there's nothing we could do that would have altered that. But here is the extraordinary reality of politics. We are the best spokespeople for Palestine, and I have an amendment to a Nationals motion coming up on Monday, which is, again, the ability to express that support for the Palestinian people, which if we don't manage carefully simply ends up with a rout of our position in Parliament. One of the things that that's really, really important here is when you go into politics, you put yourself into a position where on occasions you're going to have to make very difficult judgments to ensure that you get a better outcome down the line. There is no point in us being voted out if we simply serve ourselves up to the Murdoch press, to the Liberal Party.